That's the point I'm making with respect to media. The question of petitions, Sir Byron proposed petition rules. Question of petitions. I say again that under the current arrangements, the law which the Constitution allows the Parliament to pass, the law provides that election petitions, and we know about petitions, we've had the petitions in 2005, 2009, 2014, 2019, I will ask all of them. All of them I will ask. So the election petitions, the law provides that an election petition must be filed within 21 days of the election. But once that petition is filed, there is no provision in the law that forces this petition matter to be settled within a given time. So petitions have gone on from the time they were filed, and they're not resolved until 2.5 years, 3 years down the road. That cannot be right. We are suggesting, Mr. AG, that the rules, petition rules, be so structured, or the law rather, should provide that when an election petition is filed, yes, within the 21 days, within 90 days, the entire process must be completed and concluded so that people know as soon as possible, as early as possible, who their elected representatives are. That is what I would suggest. I want to thank you, Madam Chair, or whoever is responsible. I think it might be the Election Reform Czar, for giving us opportunity here. And you know what, representation is important, you know, because we made representation for Marigot. And so I understand that we'll be having a session in Marigot next Tuesday. So I promise you, God willing, I'll be there. So I'm going to stop now because the chairman has told me she doesn't want to stop me, but don't talk too long. So I respect her. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. James, and we appreciate your contribution. I believe the Attorney General would like to make some comments. Since you have engaged the attorney and asked for his response on some matters, he will. But I want to say, after the AG, I do realize some of you may not like the spotlight. Literally, there's a spotlight on the podium. So feel free to raise your hands, and the mic will come to you where you are. Okay, some of the shy ones, my friends from Benz, we will send the mic to the audience, to you. I know you have something to say. AG?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I suspect, because people are not rushing to the podium, that I probably am not denying anybody too much of an opportunity. Just to respond, Mr. James asked me to address the issue of residence. Mr. James, I will address this comprehensively on next week when we're at Marigot, and you just indicated that you will be there also. But I'll give a taster so that maybe you can go and converse with your colleagues and do your own research, and we can probably, at some point, have a meeting of the minds. Section 33 of the Constitution, which you referred to, Section 33(2), which I do have before me now because I have a copy of the Constitution, says at subsection 2A, and I think it's important for the listeners and for the people here that I read it, as opposed to what I did earlier. Every Commonwealth citizen of the age of 18 years or upwards who possesses such qualifications relating to residence or domicile in Dominica as Parliament may prescribe shall, unless he is disqualified by Parliament from registration, and I ask that you note those two words, from registration, as a voter for the purpose of electing representatives, be entitled to be registered as such a voter in accordance with the provisions of any law in that behalf, and no other person may be so registered. So 2A is dealing with a person and the qualifications required for a person to be registered as a voter. So let's move to 2B. 2B reads as follows. Every person who is registered, so not seeking to be registered, who is registered as aforesaid in any constituency shall, and listen to this, unless he is disqualified by Parliament from voting in that constituency in any election of representatives, be entitled so to vote in accordance with the provisions of any law in that behalf, and no other person may vote. The significance of the distinction between 2A and 2B, I suggest, is this. In 2A, it is stating there is a requirement for residence or domicile so as to be able to be registered. In 2B, it is stating where once a person is registered, unless he or she is disqualified by Parliament from voting, not from registration, from voting, he or she is entitled to remain on the register. Last few words were my own addition, but that is the interpretation of it. And in relation to the issue of disqualification, so Dennis addresses that at page 19 of his phase 1 report under the heading disqualification, which reads as follows. The persons with residence qualification who are disqualified to vote are persons of unsound mind, undergoing any sentence of imprisonment in Dominica of more than 1 year. The third category is under sentence of death imposed by any court in the Commonwealth. And third and final is disqualified by any written law. Those provisions that I just referred to are found at section 6 of the existing Registration of Electors Act, chapter 203, and I'm not going to read them, but A, B, C, D are the provisions that cover the 4 elements that Sir Dennis referred to in his report. So what I would say in summary is this, that all of the hullabaloo about absence and its ordinary residence and all of that, ordinary residence relates to the requirement to become registered. It does not relate to a person who is already registered and who remains entitled to vote as it currently stands until he or she is removed. And if one observes the existing legislation, it actually provides that the list at the point that the writ is issued, the list that exists, subject to the amendments that the Constitution and the legislation provide, the list is conclusive. So whoever's on it is entitled to vote.
Thank you, AG. I just wanted to point out, Mr. James, that we've checked with our technicians. Our audio did not drop, so the messenger, you can let them know that their mic was probably muted on their device, but our live stream has been on throughout. Okay, thank you for that. I believe Mr. White would like to speak. We can take the mic to you. Or are you coming up?
Good evening, members of the head table. I believe protocol has already been established. Let me just say that I would oppose any suggestion of people who reside overseas to be denied the rights to vote. I believe that once someone is registered to vote, that you should only be removed if deaf. Yeah. I don't support the expansion of the Electoral Commission. And there's an issue of campaign financing. I strongly believe that we shouldn't look in that direction. I don't agree. I don't agree that the Treasury should finance political parties or candidates or individuals to run for election or seek office. That to me is that you put in a burden. We all come from different walks of life. We all come from different backgrounds, and to ask the Treasury to pay candidates to run for election is putting financial hardship on the citizens of the Commonwealth, and I don't think that we should look in that direction. And lastly, I fully support the the national ID card. I'm in full support of the national ID card because it's a card that can serve both purposes. It can serve as a voter ID card and it can serve as a national ID card. And while reading through the document, I could have sworn that I saw that in the amount of 1.5 million was already allocated to purchase the machine for the national ID card. So if we already have the machine, why should we look into other avenues, and we already have the technology at our disposal? I thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. White. There is a gentleman at the back. The mic is next to you. You can speak from where you are.
Charles Richards.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Okay, good evening to Chair, to the AG. My concern really is a few concerns. The overseas residents. I believe since you registered to vote as a Dominican, your name shouldn't be removed from the list until you die. No, I have a concern that some like Commonwealth citizens who passed due to their work was in Dominica and their name is on this voters list still and they're out of state for over 5 years, I believe we should remove them. We should remove their names from the voters list. But as born Dominicans, always coming and going, I don't think we should remove their name from the list. And for the voters ID card, I believe the reason for identification card is your picture to prove that I am Charles Richards. So if I come with a passport to vote and I have my driver's license or my passport, you watch it. That is Charles Richards. So I don't see a problem in that. Why I should have a specific card for voting. Because all you want to do is identify that is Charles Richards. I think that should be the purpose. So I don't see no reason about this voters ID card and even fingerprint and all them stuff. Because when you leave to go and vote, when you tell the officer in the polling station, I am Charles Richards. They look on the paper, they look on the sheet, they have the number, you have your number, you know. They see your number. If you're in a doubt, I don't see why you cannot use a passport, Charles Richards. You know? So I don't see the need for any voter's ID card. That to me that doesn't make sense. And about the how you call it, the term limit for Prime Minister, I totally against that too. Because it's the people that are deciding. If you go up for election and people decide, well, you had 10 years, I know voting you. But if you continue voting you, because the people want you. So why put a limit on them? Eh? If the people want you as Prime Minister, they vote for you. If they don't want you, they don't vote for you. So you see why you have to put any restriction on them, to come and say about term limit. And the other question about Prime Minister having the date of election in back pocket. Eugenie had this in her handbag. Nobody never say anything. She call it when she want. Mr. James had this in his back pocket. He called it without some people even know. You understand? Then you come again, Mr. Skerritt, he have it in his back pocket, call it when you want, but that is something that continue to happen. No, and the question is, is not that making you going to win or lose the election, Because Eugenia lose the election, Mr. James lose the election, although he had it in his back pocket, he still lose the election. You understand? So I don't see the need for that. You understand? So that is my humble opinion. That is my humble opinion. Okay?
Thank you very much for your humble opinion, Mr. Charles. Did we have, okay. Would you like to?
Good night, everyone. The observers, good night. Mr. AG, special good night. I must say I love my country. If I would start my conversation tonight and did not allude to the fact that I love my country, it would be remiss of me. I want to start with Mr. AG. In your introduction, you alluded to the fact about the voter ID card as to whether it should be a voter ID or a national ID. And you were on the way of specifying your own thoughts, but you fell short. So when I'm done, I would like you to come up here and tell the crowd what card you think it's supposed to be. Now, I have a lot to say, but I think a lot of Dominicans have pretty much said what I really would want to say. But I want to start tonight by saying, I feel very moved due to the fact that opposition forces or Dominicans have been begging for an electoral reform since I could remember 2008, 2009, somewhere about there. We did form an electoral commission. And tonight, or from the first night of this getting together, I would have expected to see members from the commission delivering the information to the Dominican Labour Party, to the UWP, to the Dominica Freedom Party, and to whoever party it is. But for some unseen situation, we now have members of the government disseminating the information to us. And for that, I would want to say it is categorically unfair. The Dominican Labour Party people should be recipients tonight and every other night. They are lawyers on the commission. Maybe you might want to say that Mr. AG, because of his position, would want to be one of these people disseminating information. So I could give him, I'm not embarrassing myself, you need to listen. You need to stop carrying the politics everywhere you go. This is not for politics. This is for Dominica. No, you have to talk to them. That's how they are. You don't come here and leave here empty. You come here to get better off in your mind so you can go back to your children and explain to them. A few years ago, Tony Astafan, he sat at ZDK Radio and he fought tooth and nail for the Antiguans to receive a voter's ID card. What is the problem why Dominican people cannot have a voter's ID card? He comes to you now and he tells you, I cannot afford. Who does Dominica belong to? Does it belong to Tony or does it belong to every Dominican? This is where I'm going. Tonight is not no time for no politics. Tonight is not a time to come here in no red clothes and trying to back a party. No, we're not for that tonight. Tonight is for Dominica. Many of us here over 40, our death bell will come just now. And we will die. And what we will leave for our children behind. This is where we need to go. So, to the observers, I hope you can see to yourself, or you're observing the fact that we are in a situation where you have the government. The government is telling us where we should go, whereas the government people itself should be the ones together with us sitting down there and listening. Yes, they might say they're sitting down there tonight, but there are people up here representing the state. And the people we nominated to form the laws or do whatever they have to do in the commission, none of them are here tonight. And you beg yourself the question, why? Why? You'll go to Marigot next Tuesday, and none of them will be there. And you'll ask yourself the question again, why? That is where I see my interest. I see it for the future of Dominica. And somebody said a while ago, before I leave, that they bought a machine to print national ID cards. Fine. I have no problems with that. But a machine is a machine. He also went on to say that, well, he alluded to the fact about the overseas vote. With a national ID card, my friend, a lot of things can happen. And I'll tell you, who is to say that the people that obtain our Dominican passports, who are not born and bred Dominicans, who is to say that those people cannot be influenced by the state to come here and vote? Who is to say that? We may say that people from Wesley living abroad and they come or they send barrel for their family can vote. That might be an argument. But what about the people who has never set foot in Dominica? What about those people? What about the state going out to them and asking them to come back here to do them a favor? And we all know what the favor is. Now, where do we go? 20,000 people come in from Asia, and they come to Dominica and they vote. And they vote in favor of the incumbent. What happens? Do you think you, the people in Dominica here purporting for the Labour Party, would be happier than ever? I beg to differ. So, that is my little plan, my little thought. I want to think that we need a voter's ID card. I heard my good friend say a while ago, we don't need to clean the list in a certain way. Yes, we need to remove the dead people, because in my constituency, in 2019, I saw a lady, and I only knew her on a picture in an album at home. I'm 51 today, this year. And 2019 from now will be how many years? About 4 years? So I was about 47. And for my 47 years of life, I've never seen that person. But that would mean that that person was never registered in Dominica, because I saw the first election in Dominica since we get independence. That's how I know. Okay? That person left Dominica. That person left Dominica in the Windrush. They went to England on a boat. If you understand what I'm saying, they left here young and they went to London on a boat. Dominica didn't even have airport to send them. But they came back to Dominica. They came here and they voted here. We all know that. Don't run away from the fact. We know we're from Wesley. You know. So those are the Maclay, you don't need to do that, Maclay. We're all from Wesley. You said what you had to say a while ago. Listen to what I'm saying. Okay? Right. So these are the things, you know. We can jump high, we can jump low. Those are the things that affect Dominican people. Yes, today we have a Labour Party government. Whatever they do or continue to do, it will affect us in some way. Look at our situation now. Dominica is in no good situation now. It's a fact. But I don't want to go there. This is not about that tonight. This is about electoral reform. And I want to say, we need a voter's ID card. We need to clean the voters list. There are some technicalities about people living overseas. I personally I cannot fathom people living overseas and paying taxes overseas. And because my father sent a barrel for me, he left here in 1977, never passed back Dominica. And because my father sent a barrel for me once a year, that gives him the right to come to change the status quo in Dominica. No, I say no. I will continue to say no. And Mr. AG, I hope you can correct me if I'm wrong. This is where I'll keep it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your contribution and for sharing your views. I just wanted to note that at the beginning, I'm not sure if a few of us were late, and I think at the last consultation, the AG set the context for the consultations being run here. Of course, the government is expected to approve and recommend these, this legislation has to go to Parliament. And it goes to Parliament, of course the Cabinet approves, and it goes to Parliament to be voted on. And we do need to understand that the consultation, as you said yourself, we are here to listen. So we are here, the government is here, the community is here, and we are all here to listen, to hear your views as to what you think should be included in this legislation. I am not sure if the AG wanted to respond on the issue of registration to vote, but if not, we will have, okay, thank you, AG.
Madam Chair, just two things. One is, I think, it may be the last speaker wasn't here at the outset of my presentation, when I addressed the responsibilities of the Electoral Commission as provided for in Section 38 and 51 of the Constitution. But of course he can read those if he chooses to do so subsequently. But just in terms of, throughout all of these consultations, I've heard a lot about the Electoral Commission. Fine, the Constitution provides for it, we need it. But there's a certain suggestion that somehow the criticisms that are being leveled at the government for trying to put this consultation together and get this process forward wouldn't be leveled at the Commission. It would, and it is, even during these consultations. There are criticisms being leveled against the Commission, or usually at particular members who are not on a perceived side or the other. And it's important to recognize that the Constitution provides for the composition of the Constitution. And it provides, I suggest, for a political composition. Why do I say that? Because what it says at Section 56, subsection 3, is that the Commission shall consist of a chairman appointed by the President, who in that role acts in his own deliberate judgment. Secondly, 2 members appointed by the President acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister. And I don't think anybody would expect the Prime Minister to nominate to the President for appointment to the Electoral Commission someone who he feels is somebody who is against him. Let's put it that way. And secondly, it provides for the President to appoint 2 people on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition. So you wouldn't expect the Leader of the Opposition to nominate to the President somebody who he or she thinks is not somebody who is, or put it differently, somebody who is anti them. So let's strip away a lot of this pretense. What we need to do is deal with the facts. The facts are set out in the report. We have a number of issues that Sir Dennis recommends. There are others that we may think of ourselves. Let's put them forward. Let's discuss them. Let's determine which of those we feel we can go forward with, and let's go forward with them. Let's stop trying to fight over things that perhaps we don't need to. And I should say that I have it before me, the reference to the identification cards, and again a repeated suggestion that there is opposition. I think we have consensus, if I understand it, that identification cards can be used. I think some people believe that identification cards are not necessary, and we've heard people saying that. But there are other people who say, okay, it's not necessary, but okay, let's have it. The issue, as I've understood it, is largely what should be in them. Should there be fingerprints? Should there be facial recognition features? Should there be photographs? Should it be, I suppose somebody might say, should it be a color photograph? Should it be a black and white photograph? What's the nature of it? But as early as 2017, and I'm looking at on my phone at a 2017 draft of the Registration of Electors Amendment Act, Clause 9 of that draft bill, which was proposed to be Section 19A of the existing Act, stated that for the purposes of Section 19 of the Commission, Electoral Commission, shall, after consultation with the Chief Elections Officer, appoint enrollment officers. Sorry, I think I was looking at the wrong thing there. No, right, it's Clause 8, which is a proposed amendment to the existing Act to replace the existing Section 19 of the Registration of Electors Act, Chapter 203, with this. The Chief Registering Officer shall A, cause national identification cards containing prescribed information to be issued in accordance with regulations. B, maintain a roll of persons who have been issued national identification cards. C, designate locations for the purpose of the issuing of national identification cards. And subsection 2, notwithstanding subsection 1, if he considers it appropriate to do so, by order, prescribe other suitable methods of preventing electors from voting more than once in the same election. That provision for identification cards was in the 2017 draft, indeed the bill which went to the House of Parliament, the House of Assembly, and wasn't proceeded with. We need not tonight go into the reasons for that.
Thank you very much, AG. Mr. Linton, Brian Linton.
Good night, Madam Chair. I had a very excellent working relationship with the chairman at the Dominica State College. The Minister of Education is my colleague at the Dominica Teachers College. Fidel Grant, that is like a family member to his father. I had an encounter with the Czar of election reform or modernization, Mr. Kenneth Daru, when I was the manager, the general secretary of the United Workers' Party. Mr. Daru was one of the prospects that were under consideration to contest the seat in the Pittsburgh constituency on a United Workers' Party ticket. That is important for us to establish, to know that I come here in peace. Yes, I come here in peace, because you see, when we're talking about voter registration and voter ID card, some time ago I heard a presentation from Attorney Newell's Knight, which was very informative with respect to the difference between a national identification card and a voter identification card. There's a significant difference between those two documents. The question is the question of relevance. A passport is not, which is a national identification document, it is not relevant to voting. On a voter identification card, you will have information relevant and specific to voting with respect to the voter carrying the card. For example, his name, his picture, his voter registration number, his polling district, the constituency in which he's voting. All of these are specific to voting. So that is what you'd find on a voter registration card. You will not find that information specific or relevant to voting on any other type of national identification card. And as you heard from, I think, the AG or one of the presenters before, on that very issue of the Election Commission issuing national identification cards, Mr. Byron, the consultant, has concerns about that. He warns us in his report. So I hope all of us who are supporting this national identification card, I hope you also are aware of the fact that Mr. Byron has concerns about if the commission has authority to issue national identification cards. I want the observers to understand in Dominica, we have laws already on the books that makes provision for us to have a clean voters list. We have laws already on the books which make provision, give the commission the authority to issue national ID cards, voter ID cards. Somehow, our list is bloated. We have more people on the list than the population of Dominica, and that in itself is very embarrassing. So anybody talking about we do not need to clean list, that's foolishness. Stop, we cannot propagate that type of foolishness. The list must be cleaned. The laws make arrangement for the list to be cleaned periodically, where people come, submit names, submit whatnot and so on, and the electoral office does the investigation, and they decide whether or not the name should be removed and so on. That has been an ongoing process. Although we have had situations just about the 2019 elections where we submitted over 1,000 concerns to the Electoral Commission so that they could address names that should not be on the list, and those names were disregarded. So I want the observers to take note of that as well, in terms of the difficulty that we've had in implementing the mechanism to clean the list periodically. I want to read something there, you know. The Deputy U.S. Permanent Representative, Alexis F. Ludwig, in a statement at the OECS Permanent Council, recalled the joint OAS, CARICOM, and Commonwealth mission to Dominica by last August, and 3 areas of concerns were identified for free and fair and transparent elections. That's the OAS, the Commonwealth, and some other big organization. Here are the 3 areas, again, just for emphasis. 1, removal of deceased persons and illegible voters from the current electoral list. That's not us saying that. That is the observers who are sitting there. That's what they told us years ago. The second thing they told us years ago, I guess they're probably surprised to hear that we're still telling them things about what they recommended to us, and they still not recommended. The other thing they recommended was the issuance of photo identification cards to electors to facilitate more accurate identification at the polls. And 3, removal from the current electoral list of all diaspora voters who are ineligible to vote by virtue of being out of the country for more than 5 years. Okay? So that is from the OAS, the CARICOM. Those are things that they recommended to us years ago. We heard about the email from Tony Astafan in 2008. That is the email which gave the government ministers and the government machinery the instructions and the guidance to frustrate electoral reform in Dominica, to allow dead people to continue to be on the list so that they could facilitate the tainted election process as outlined by the CCJ. Many of you don't understand what the CCJ is. That is the Caribbean Court of Justice. It is this government who decided to move from the Privy Council to the CCJ to be our final court of appeal. And the CCJ warned the people of Dominica, warned you, please do not allow us to have elections in the future with the taints that have been happening in elections since 2009. They've warned us because they recognize in Dominica since 2009 we have never had a free and fair elections. The other thing we're talking about is people coming in to vote. What I'm discovering, listening to the conversation, is that people who are in the diaspora, who have disqualified themselves to vote by changing their residency, They are the ones who paid their passage, take their money from their pocket, and decide to leave Dominica because it's probably too hard for them in Dominica. They cannot make it. To go and work in another man's country, to develop his country, to pay taxes in that country. And every 5 years, they expect a gift from a party, a gift of a free ticket to come and vote for that party. They cannot even afford to pay for their own tickets to come and vote. And that is their big issue. Their issue is the receipt of that free ticket, the free ticket that labor rights alone get to come to vote in Dominica. Okay? So that is the problem that we have, causing all of the confusion, why people cannot understand the reasoning in the fact that only residents of a country have the right to vote in a country. They are the ones paying the taxes in the country. They are the ones suffering from whatever consequences the laws of the country have on them. So they are the ones who have the right to vote. How can you consider it fair for somebody living overseas all of their life, get a free ticket, come down to vote, they have passage money, they have hotel money, they have spending money. They get a vacation, they vote, they go back. And then they leave the government to implement its policies on you that may be affecting you negatively while they are away, enjoying themselves in the country that they choose to go to, the country that they went to, where they put their hand in their pocket. Not government that sent them away. It wasn't the government who paid their passage to go where they went to establish new residence. But as we've heard from previous presenters, and the AG knows that very well, because if you talk to, I heard Commissioner Hilary Shillingford on Q95 the other day, explaining something about a conversation he had with Mr. Byron. And Mr. Byron, from what I understand from Commissioner Hilary Shillingford, Mr. Byron is convinced that if we have more aggressive lawyers in Dominica, they will challenge the government's position of entitlement by, absence rather than residence. Because of the fact that the Constitution, as we heard, firmly establishes that for you to be entitled to be on any voters list in Dominica, the main qualification, you must be resident in Dominica. We have economic citizens right now. They have no resident in Dominica. Are you telling me that they are entitled to come and vote in Dominica? Economic citizens. Citizens who are official citizens of Dominica. Never been to Dominica once in their life. Never sent a barrel. Never sent a 5 cents. Have no relatives in Dominica. Nobody to come to, no links. Are you saying that you would want those people, 20,000, over the past 3 years, this government sold over 46,000 passports. Do you understand what that means to you? That's 46,000 new Dominicans out there that you don't know anything about. They never sent a barrel to you yet. But you are saying, based on your argument, that they are entitled to vote. They have a right to vote. Are you listening to yourselves? Observers, are you listening to the arguments that the government supporters are making to continue to try to legitimize illegal elections? That is what is happening. The government, what we're seeing the government supporting is confirmation of the fact that the government is admitting that they have been involved in treating and bribing. So to get rid of that problem, they want to make it law. That is what is happening. Because the CCJ confirmed to us that elections in Dominica have been tainted. And what we hear coming from the government and their supporters is an admission that the elections indeed have been tainted. And right now, they are on a mission to make what is illegal, to make it legal. We have a situation before us where a criminal complaint was filed against 14 government ministers, a criminal complaint relating to election issues. It reached to the CCJ. The CCJ said, ordered the court in Dominica to try the case. But because, again, they have manipulated the system and even the legal system too, after the CCJ gave the court in Dominica the order to try the case, what did they do? They went and they allowed their DPP to nullify process the case that the CCJ, the highest court in the land, gave order to go to trial. The government turned around through their DPP and nullify process the case. That had to do with election issues. I hope this Tsar is listening, for him to take his notes. Because those are the issues that we have to be dealing with. And as somebody, I think is Mr. Roll indicated, today the United Workers' Party is in opposition. The Freedom Party is in opposition. Tomorrow, maybe the Labour Party Day, who knows? Or probably some of you believe that the Labour Party has no tomorrow. They're there for life. Check? So that is what all we are asking for in this process is a level playing field. And in conclusion, I want to concur with the concern of Mr. Roll with respect to the role of the Electoral Commission. And while I am on that, I want to advise the ministers of government, beginning with the Tsar. And Mr. Henderson, my friend, very good relationship as my boss in the Ministry of Education. Excellent relationship. Please inform and educate your members properly. I hate to see people take advantage of the ignorance of people. Because you see, around you they will be clapping. But when they go in other forums, they will embarrass themselves. So please inform and educate your people properly. The Electoral Commission, the observers, all of the government representatives on the Electoral Commission are passport peddlers, every one of them. I hope the observers are aware of that. Okay? All of them. And I wonder why, because we're talking about qualifications because the Attorney General made a point, a very good point. The Attorney General said that the Prime Minister would not appoint anybody to the commission which is against him. Is fine. I just want to find out, because I said in conclusion, why is it that all of the representatives on the Electoral Commission representing the government are passport peddlers, and why is it that it is Mr. Daru that is the Tsar? We are not seeing anything from, we have Duncan Stowe, the government representative who is the chairman of the Electoral Commission. Okay? So all of those things are things that we need to understand if we truly want electoral reform that will create the balance or the level playing field. Madam Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Yes, hold on. We have a couple of contributions, but I believe the Attorney General wanted to. But before we get to the AG, we have about 3 hands. We had Ms. Fabian who wanted to speak. We had Mr. Nansan. There is the young lady from the Kalibishi Village Council, and then Mr. Joseph. So the mic can be brought to you, or you can come up.
All right, good evening, everyone. Recognizing the head table, the ministers of government, the observers, ladies and gentlemen, members from the constituencies. I'm a community member from the village of Benz, and this is where I will share my perspectives from.
Can we have some order? Can we have some order, please? There is a speaker on the floor. Go ahead, Ms. Fabian.
Great. I'm happy to be able to share my perspectives on some of the points that have been raised this evening where we're able to share our feedback and areas that we see how we could improve as Dominicans. The first area that I would like to share on is a matter of the voters' ID cards. And my perspective is that national ID cards should be recommended as opposed to just voters' ID card. Reason being, multi-purpose ID cards are useful for travel and for other purposes. And I believe that as Dominica, as a country that's looking at being forward-thinking, being a country that can set the pace, not only following other countries because some other countries have adopted certain practices, but we can set the stage for what we want to happen in Dominica. And this, with a national ID card, can help us to set the stage in an area that I think would be trend-setting for our country. I agree to the bill that we should amend the House of Assembly Act to require electors to present a valid identification card at polling stations and allow for alternative procedure for persons who have lost, misplaced, or do not have an identification card. Now, one of the areas that I think that we could be forward-thinking in this area is to cross-reference a national ID card with a voter's registration. I do not think that we need a card specifically for voting, but we need a national ID card that can include the details, what some persons are also asking, that can be used as part of the voter's registration. In looking at some of the countries of those who've had voter's ID card and other type of cards that are used for voting, it also includes the polling station where a voter needs to, where they're registered at. And I think that information is extremely important. Whichever party you're in, whatever you're doing, I think that it's important that we're able to recognize as part of that identification the details of a voter in Dominica. When COVID arose, we had some cards initially, and I still have the card that I walk around with, but we innovated and we had COVID electronic recognition or IDs that we could travel with, and it was recognized across the world. I think similarly with the voter's ID card and with the national ID card, where we include the voter's registration, we could have that similar cross-reference. I think that card should have electronic stripe. It should have some high technology that we can use to travel, to do many different things. But also looking at how do we innovate in our health system and cross-reference this exact national ID card with our health system that we're able to access certain information, and it could be used across different parts of our country. I believe that why invest in a voter's ID card when other forms of IDs are acceptable? Reference was made to other countries who use voters' ID card, but some of these same countries have identified that you do not need to work with the voter's ID card when you go to vote. You can use an alternate form of ID, such as the passport, the driver's license, and other forms of ID. So my recommendation on the voter's ID card, part of the discussion, is that we have a multi-purpose national ID card, and we innovate, we set the trend, we set the pace that other countries can now follow. In terms of residency and the diaspora, I believe that if someone meets the requirements of being a resident of Dominica, they should be allowed to vote as they have a vested interest in the country. I know the concern is also about the persons who become citizens of Dominica through economic means. If they meet the requirement of Dominica, there should be a minimum standard, a standard that's applicable to everyone. You must be resident in Dominica for a certain period before you're eligible to vote. So someone who is an economic citizen cannot just come and vote. They have to meet a minimum requirement in order to be able to vote. Now, when we look at the matter of voting, I believe that everyone reserves a right to vote or not vote in a specific election. I listened to the contribution of some other